recorded. If you could please join me in standing for the Pledge of Allegiance, that would be great.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands.
All right, thank you. I would like to now introduce our Board of Directors. We're here tonight, Cindy Coe, Madeline DeMatenon, Jonathan Henderson, myself, Mike Rowley. Tasha Woods is not able to join us tonight. We're also joined by our Superintendent, Troy Turno, Executive Director of Teaching and Learning, Jen Kuntz, Executive Director of Finance and Operations, Kim Snyder, and our two student representatives, Max Steele and Amari Thorne, sorry. Board, first action item is the consent agenda. We've had an opportunity to review these items and seek clarification from district admin prior to tonight. I would entertain a motion.
I move that we accept the consent agenda.
I'll second.
All right, thank you. Madeline has moved that we accept the consent agenda and Cindy has seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Consent agenda approved. And all right, that takes us into administration board. So first up, under administration, Ellensburg School District Education Foundation Report.
Yeah, so it's my pleasure to introduce Maureen Rust, who's representing the Ellensburg School District Education Foundation. And we got a short presentation on the activities that they've been doing and how they've been supporting our work in the district.
Great, thank you. It's coming. We had asked at our retreat this summer, we had been brainstorming, and one of the things that we wanted to do was come and just present to the school board 3 times during the year. Can you hear it okay? Oh, sorry, thank you. I don't do this much. Just to update you on what the Ed Foundation is doing, to inform you in case you're not very familiar with it, and also to find out what would you like to know about the Ed Foundation. So tonight is just kind of a basic introduction to what the Ed Foundation does. It's coming. You're okay. Our why is listed at the bottom of the slide. We believe in providing resources and recognition in an equitable way so that students in the Ellensburg School District can reach their full potential. Okay. So about us, and all of these blue headings are hyperlinks to our website. We have a lot of information on our website, so please do visit it if you want additional information. Who? It's to benefit schools, departments, students, and parent groups, faculty, and administrators. What? We are an autonomous 501c3 created to address growing challenges in the public school system, helping to meet needs outside traditional funding sources. So I describe it as we run parallel with the district. We are not we are independent from the district, but our superintendent does sit on our board. Where? Primarily within the Ellensburg School District, with the exception of our Youth Achievement Program, which is countywide. When? It was founded in 2001, and why? To meet the growing challenges in the public school system and to meet needs outside traditional funding sources. Great, so how? These are our standout programs, our Learning Enhancement Awards, and I'll go into a little more detail on each of these. Caring Cupboard, the Youth Achievement Awards, scholarships, staff appreciation, bookmobile support, umbrella insurance policy, our legacy wall at the high school, and emergency funding. So Learning Enhancement Awards, this program, it allows for teachers, staff, and students and district employees to apply for a program and get funding to support that program. It's usually for something that the district it's not in the normal budget. And to date, the foundation has awarded over $100,000 to classrooms and projects to increase student success. And again, on the website, you can go in and take a look at the different types of projects that we funded. Just a highlight for anybody that's listening, the 2024 grant deadline is coming up midnight this November 1st. And it's a really friendly online application process, so please do. Here are a couple examples of projects that were funded this year. The Lincoln Robotics Club competition, Valley View took a field trip to Woodland Park Zoo, and the First Grade Learning Center got headphones at Lincoln School. And those are just a few of them, but they're again listed on our website. Caring Cupboard, some of you might be familiar with this. It's through a relationship that really it's Mary Gordon, our vice president, has established with administrators and school counselors to provide immediate supplies for students who need supplies to just succeed in school. And here are some examples: warm clothing and footwear, school supplies, clothing for professional employment, adaptive equipment, safe shelters, vision screenings and discounted eyewear, hygiene supplies. And the beauty of this program is a counselor will call Mary and say, I need warm socks, or I need black clothing for a job at Fred Meyer for a student. And she just goes and gets it and drops it off that day. I would say almost always that day, if not within 24 hours. Since you don't have to go back, but since 2014, we have allocated $27,000 to the Caring Cupboard program. It's not a tangible cupboard. I thought it was a supply cupboard, but it's more of an on-demand type program. Okay. Youth Achievement Awards. This was modeled after a similar program in Yakima. We've been doing it for probably, I think, 4 years now. And we do it along with, I want to say it's Kiwanis and other community members and groups. Delina Brecken is she's on the committee to help select the awards and present. She's actually in this slide. And it's to honor the Kittitas County youth for things that they do to stand out that they might not normally get recognized for. And so the categories are the arts, business and enterprise, civics and community service, family life, leadership, personal achievement, STEM, and then it can also be individuals or small groups or large groups. And we have a big celebration, usually in March or April, where everybody gets a certificate at Morgan Middle School. It's a lot of fun, and I encourage you, if you're available, it's really wonderful to see the students that get recognition that are doing important things in their community or their families that maybe wouldn't be recognized otherwise. Scholarships. We have a unified scholarship program. We coordinate nearly 30 local scholarships awarded to Ellensburg High School seniors. And right now we're managing over $1.3 million in scholarship funds. The third bullet is a new program. A local family came to the Ed Foundation and said they wanted to give $20,000 a year as a repayment fund for teachers in the district. And they were specific about they wanted it to be first generation teachers. And so this was the foundation got together, we created a form and then had the family approve it, and it went out this year. And so this is the first year we had, I believe, 6 applications. We're in the final process right now of choosing one winner. It'll be one person gets a $20,000 stipend. And so we're really, really excited about that one. And it's all due to the community member. And it's another, I think, good example of how the foundation can step in and help proctor a program like this. Staff appreciation. We feel strongly that a staff who feels valued is better able to give their best to kids. So we've been we used to kind of hit and miss flowers and candy in the staff lounges, things like that. We're getting a little bit more methodical. So we are now collaborating with the parent groups at the schools to help them with their planned Teacher Appreciation Day in the spring. And then we worked with administration this fall to kind of bring back the Welcome Back Barbecue, which was a lot of fun. And we have a lot of really exciting and fun ideas for next year. We'd like to grow that program again. Bookmobile support. The Ed Foundation was one of the original sponsors when the Bookmobile was first being developed about 11 years ago. And a few years ago, we just added an annual line item of $500 to help replenish books and buy new books. And then the foundation also supported myself and Mandy Laurent, who is the heart and soul of the Bookmobile, got to attend and present at a conference for an Association of Bookmobile and Outreach Services last year. More projects. We have an umbrella insurance policy. Dick Wadeen knows a lot more about that than I do, but we have a policy that student groups can take advantage of if they have a program that requires insurance coverage. And again, if you have any questions, I can connect you with Dick to give you more information on that. We have a legacy wall at the high school, and then we will get, because our Learning Enhancement Awards it's just one cycle once a year, we will get requests. So we had some students that were competing or performing in a musical event in, I want to say it was Washington, D.C., and they suddenly needed travel funds. So we help with travel funds. We get a lot of those types of requests where it wasn't planned necessarily. We really want to encourage the students and support them in going. And so we will consider those types of requests as well. So this is my big pitch. Please join it. It's so much fun if you haven't been there before. We have a Super Bowl warm-up fundraiser. It's always the Friday before the Super Bowl. It's the way that we fund our Learning Enhancement Awards. And yeah, it's just a lot of fun. So please keep it on your radar, and we'll be sending out more information about it within the next month or two. These are our board members right now. Mike McCloskey's our president, Mary Gordon's the VP, Dick Wadeen's treasurer, I serve as secretary, and we also have Michelle Bibich and Troy Tornow on our board. But we would love to have a board of more like about 11 people. So if anybody I'm so proud of this board. I'm proud to be a part of it. I grew up in Ellensburg. I graduated from Ellensburg. Its intentions are all really stellar, I think. So it's a fun group. So if you have any interest, please go online and shoot us an email. Okay, and we very much appreciate having a little bit of time at your meeting. We'll be back in January and then again in March. So please do reach out if there's something specific you'd like to have more information about. And thank you again for your time. Any questions at all?
Board, any questions? Thank you very much, Maureen.
Okay, thanks for your time.
All right, Troy. Next up is item B, Garco Construction Report.
Good evening. Thanks for having me. I'm Stacy Schul with OAC Services. We've provided construction management on the school projects. I met a couple of you, I think, last spring, and Damon Gardella has been involved as well, former OAC employee. So really not a lot to update. We're standing in one of the schools, and of course, Mount Stewart is the other. Those are nearly closed out contractually. Some final paperwork needs to be completed. And then you'll see a final approval come through once that contract is closed out. Lincoln, kind of same deal. It actually may beat these two. And just a few warranty items on all three schools being attended to and wrapped up, but generally substantially complete and being used. And I think great spaces for our students. Randy, do you have anything that you would elaborate on?
No, we have a few commissioning items that we're still working on there at Lincoln with controls. We did our final test with the fire truck today on our fire lane to make sure that it was going to be stable. In the other areas, other than the one that we have, it's about a 10 by 10 square area that we've got a catastrophic failure. Garco is trying to find a contractor for the asphalt, so when they open it up and do some core sampling to find out what's going on underneath there, they can seal it back up until they can get it repaired. But so we're working on that. Most of your asphalt contractors are booked out for quite some time. So that's kind of been a challenge for them. We're undergoing training now on all of our control systems. There we had our first lessons last week. We got more tomorrow. So me and the guys are doing really good. We actually have control of the building now. as far as the controls go, which we've been waiting for a little bit of time, but it was worth the wait, I think. But I think we're really close. We got, like I said, just a few commissioning issues with the HVAC and the controls. And I think once that's done, I think we'll be able to close it out.
Any questions?
What was the timeline for those last few things?
Which, the closeout of the contract?
Yeah.
So it's a good question. Probably first quarter next year.
I think one of the issues that we're running into is with NOC's notice of completions. We've got several subcontractors that haven't finished filing their affidavits yet on prevailing wage. So we're trying to get those closed down.
Board, any other questions? No? All right. Thank you, Stacy. Stacy, thank you, Randy. All right, Troy, superintendent update.
All right, thank you. Excuse me. Kind of just a few items tonight. Lessa will be able to put it up there. It's mostly informational, but the first one is just wanted to kind of give a shout out to our athletic director, Cole Canyer. He attended or was a planner and main presenter at the National Interscholastic Athletic Administrators Association conference back in September. And so got a letter from the leader of that organization thanking him for his leadership. He represents Washington and plans a lot of professional development for athletic administrators around the state. And then he had the opportunity to go national and help plan that conference and do a lot of presentations there. So that was a nice honor for one of our staff members. Last week attended the monthly ESD 105 WASA meeting with superintendents and district administrators. One of the main topics was prepping for the legislative session coming up. This is a short year. Some things are taking shape. Unfortunately for us, there's nothing that's earth-shattering or going to be an influx of a lot of funding. The state has received a significant amount of funding from the new capital gains tax that was implemented and challenged in court and upheld in court. And a good chunk of that's supposed to be earmarked for education. However, there's already, as it always goes with the legislature, when there's a chunk of new money that comes in, its intended purpose doesn't always shine through all the way. So we will get some money in K-12 education through that funding, but a lot of it's probably going to be siphoned off with some housing issues and some other things that the state would like to supplement during this budget season. However, there are some areas that impact us that are gaining traction. The people from WASA, people from Tricia Luback from WASDA was there. So we had a number of state people who run state associations and work with lobby. Our regional lobbyist was there, and they all sort of agreed that the capital projects budget may get looked at. We talked briefly, Tasha was giving one of her updates a month ago, talked about the Wahkiakum case, Wahkiakum School District, that went for essentially a McCleary type judgment in the court system for capital projects because they're unable to reach the 60% threshold to pass a bond. They have buildings that are failing. But they're sort of stuck. And so while there is probably not going to be a lowering of the threshold, we're probably not going to lose the 60% threshold for a bond in this session. There is growing sentiment on many of the legislators' parts that they are understanding some of the challenges with buildings, some of the challenges upcoming with other legislation that has been passed. So we're hoping to start some enhancements with that. One area that they're relatively relatively comfortable that probably will get some enhancements is our MSOC funding, which is our materials and supplies operating costs funding. And hopefully there is some funding that funding increases, but then there's also additional funding. I'm going to put Kim on the spot here in a second on our insurance costs. But basically every school district in the state, no matter which insurance pool they used, has received a massive increase. And so Kim kind of put that back in our budget, like hearing a long time ago, but I don't remember the number. Approximately how much was our increase this year in our insurance premiums?
I want to say our increase was it was almost 20%. I want to say we went from like 650 to 758 or somewhere in there. I can't quite remember the numbers, but it was quite an increase for this year.
Yeah. And so with no additional funding for that that $100,000 increase in our premium this year, that gets paid for out of the levy, essentially. So that's happened to all districts across the state, regardless of use clear risk like us or, the Washington Risk Management Pool or whomever. Those increases were staggering. And so the legislature understands that. So we're hoping for some very specific relief to help us pay those extra premiums that were not planned for. And then in addition to increase, because our MSOC costs have gone up across the board, utilities cost more, all these types of things. So that's really what we're hoping for. We'll continue to advocate for full funding for special education. We'll continue to advocate for some of those areas that we have been updates to the prototypical school model and staffing levels and things like that. And for us, Ellensburg, the biggest thing they could do for us would be put staff mix back into the compensation formula, because we are somewhere, north, I don't know, over $10,000 on each of our certificated staff that we don't get funding for, because we have a staff that's been here a long time, have a veteran staff. So when they took staff mix out, that was particularly difficult for our school district. So we'll continue to advocate for that. We've just been told not to hold our breath for those ones that they're probably looking to take bigger swings at the full session next year. But anything we can get will be helpful. So we'll continue to work on that. The next topic, the ESD website. So we've kind of briefed you on this, but one of the things that I encountered as I met people around the community, met people in the district, was a general consensus and belief that we could have a better, more informative website. So I've been working on that for a while. And so recently we did sign a contract with a new web host. We are going to be using Parent Square and they're what they call their smart sites. So our Parent Square communication will mesh seamlessly with our website. And the background, it's very much easier to use. So we're starting that process of planning it. We need to get going with it, to be honest. Mike Welch is working with them on some technical side. We are going to, I want to not just change the website. I want to make sure we leverage that into our entire sort of communication plan and improving that, making sure we understand how we want to use social media, the types of things that we want. So we'll be contracting with communications from my old stomping grounds from ESD 123 to have Molly Curtis come and do what we call compression planning, which was something we use there. And it's how to create some action plans. Well, so we'll have a relatively small committee. It'll be 12 to 13 people from a variety of jobs within the district, and really kind of flesh out what we want it to look like. And then how do we want to manage it in the future? Help us gather some information about that. What are some of our pitfalls? What are some things that we need to be thinking about, and how we can expand that communication, have it tied in with Parent Square. So, how do we manage all of that and have us come out with a strong action plan? We have a 3-year agreement with them. This year costs a little bit more because of the training side, but in the end, for the next 2 years, it'll cost us $4,000 less per year than our current web hosting site will. So we're saving a little bit of money with that. And basically we're on track as long as we keep some momentum going here over the next few weeks to get things really rolling. We are on track to switch over from our old site to our new site in January. So that's been a project that we've, kind of came to the forefront through all those discussions and meetings. And so we're able to make it happen. I think it's going to be something that's useful and helpful. And the fact that we can set up the permissions. So for example, when someone, an administrator at the school needs to send out a message to parents, they can do that on their phone in the Parent Square app. All they'll have to do now is click a tab in that, and then it will automatically kick out in the news feed on the website as well. And so it'll make that, hopefully should make us a little bit more efficient and better use of that communication and information. Last thing is a couple of us went out and looked at it, but we did Ida Nason here. They had the pocket forest planting last week on Friday. Unfortunately, at the end of last week, I was quite sick, so I was not able to be here on Friday to witness it, but got a couple pictures of the planting. It's quite amazing the amount of plants that they were to put in there. Each kid was each one of our students through grade levels was a part of the process of planting throughout the entire day. There was an assembly, and they just had a heck of a good time. Leslie was here taking some pictures, and go ahead and go to the next slide. Lastly, just some other things. Ethan, the one on the left there, Ethan is in working with our students. He's the landscape architect that designed the whole process. And so it's going to be very interesting for us. It's a great opportunity, as we mentioned when we were studying this, to accept a grant from the Sugi Foundation. There's only 2 schools in the Western United States that have this opportunity. The other one in Berkeley, California. It's an international organization. They do this around that. We do have another pocket forest within our region at the Yakima Nation in Toppenish. And so it's pretty cool to see how the native plants, how they'll monitor the soil. It should improve the soil. The whole purpose of planting the way that they did and using the native plants that they did is to improve soil quality. So we'll have a nice living science project and experiments throughout the next few years here to monitor. So that's all I have. Are there any questions for me?
Board, any questions or discussion? No, I guess not. Thank you very much, Troy. Let's see. So Tasha is not here tonight to do a teaching and learning. Is that you? Oh, sorry. That's a different one. Jen, sorry. Take it away on the teaching and learning update.
All right. And I did tell Troy I was going to try to keep it brief, the teaching and learning update tonight. But as I started creating the list of things to update on, it got a little larger. So it's kind of hard to capture the highlights of teaching and learning since it's what we do day in and day out in all of our buildings. But what I have here is just some snapshots of some things. And again, like I said before, hoping that perhaps there might be something that sparks an interest or some further question, and we'd be happy to delve into any of these topics at a study session because we could talk for hours on each one. Just some October happenings in TNL. We met with the Dual Language Education of New Mexico to begin planning for support of the Dual Language Task Force. So that is rolling and in motion. We do have a meeting set about once a month for the remainder of the year. And again, the goals of that team are just going to be to look at creating some shared knowledge around dual language programs and the why behind them, but then also delving into program models. What does that mean? Looking at our resources, looking at our capacity, and asking ourselves the question of, do we have the capacity and sustainability to have a dual program in Ellensburg School District? So that team, that multi-stakeholder team will be focusing on that about monthly throughout the year. So at the last study session, we spent a good deal of time going over some of our ML data and some of the improvement plans that we have put in place in our district to improve outcomes for our ML and supports for our ML students. And we did that same thing with our district learning improvement team on Monday, I think that was. So we went through that and had good conversations. Again, as a reminder, that district learning improvement team consists of administrators from every building and teachers from every building that sit on the building learning improvement team. So it's a way to have a collaborative conversation across district around some of these larger issues that we are working on. And to that end, Christine Champy, one of the things that I had told you guys that we were working on was improving both, and actually I'm just going to pop to this next slide, both that yellow portion of our civil rights obligation, which is our designated ELD. So Christine Champy came and worked with our ML teachers for a full day around really understanding the WIDA framework and how to provide strong ELD services. But then she also came on that blue portion, which is a little bit heavier lift for us and more challenging as a system, is the expectation that every classroom across the district is able to be a language development classroom for our ML students and for all students, really, because all of our students are language learners. And so she came and did, during one of our PLC days, a training with all of our K-5 staff. So that kicked off sort of a focus throughout the year on how do we improve our instructional strategies in the classroom to ensure that we are opening up content for students. And so she'll be back to work with our K-5 teachers and our secondary teachers throughout the year to provide more ongoing job embedded support and feedback on the use of those strategies. We also, over this past month, our OSSI coach has been meeting with leadership teams in every building. She's here to support those buildings that are in improvement, but we actually have her working across our district with all of our building leadership teams, particularly because, as a reminder, that WSIF data was calculated before we moved to 4 schools. So really, the students that are represented in that WSIF data are now across all 4 buildings. And so she's working with all 4 buildings, and she's really focusing on ensuring that teachers have the tools to plan unit by unit and understand the standards and the proficiency scales so that we can really have an eye on growth of students. So she has been working with the leadership teams to look at what does it mean to track growth with students. We had a full day as part of our solution tree work, we had a full day training with elementary staff, and then a full day training with secondary staff. And by staff, I mean the administrators and some people they identified in their buildings to come join the training around response to intervention, RTI, or multi-tiered systems of support, MTSS. So again, really looking at how are we creating systems that support student growth and student learning. And then kind of tied to that work is the MTSS cohort work that we are part of through ESD 105, and the teaching and learning team has met to really go through like a needs assessment, where we currently at and what is our next steps with implementing a stronger MTSS system. And that is tied to our work around inclusionary practices. And so we've also been continuing to meet in that inclusionary practices project as a TNL team. So quickly, because the last few bullets talked about RTI and MTSS, I think that it's very important to kind of have a concept of what the Washington State framework around MTSS is. People typically think of, when they think of multi-tiered systems of support, that triangle, which is the continuum of supports, but the framework really involves more than that. It involves those 5 components. And so we're doing lots of different things in all of those different areas to improve our systems. But I wanted to highlight that under each one of those areas, PLCs really fits. PLC work is a way to have team-driven shared leadership in a building. PLC is a way to have database decision-making, to look for that growth with students on a unit-by-unit basis. PLC is when we talk about that continuum of supports and the work that we're doing in our PLC improvement around a guaranteed and viable curriculum and really understanding standards, that's PLC work with that continuum of supports. And then with the evidence-based practices, PLCs is one of those evidence-based practices for school systems to implement. So I just wanted to highlight how important to all the components PLCs really are. Additionally, over this past month, we've had some highly capable training for our K-5 teachers. Our 2 highly capable teachers led that training, and we had the teachers who have the cluster groups for those students come and learn how to think about meeting highly capable need throughout the day so that it doesn't become, again, like some of our other services, a pull-out model where, well, we meet those needs during that hour that they get pulled out, but that truly we are finding ways to challenge those students throughout their day. And in addition to that training that we offered for our K-5 teachers, we had some elementary and secondary teachers attend WATAG, which is the highly capable conference in Washington State. And they've already come back thrilled about some of the stuff they learned and can't wait to share it. So that's exciting. We've been having more intentional T&L meetings with principals this year, which has been really great. And thank you to Troy for implementing these systems to be able to meet more frequently to dig into topics around T&L and have better collaboration and more conversation, which leads to more accountability for making progress in these areas. So not only do we have the T&L meetings with administrators to talk more about topics, and I think the principals and APs have expressed a thankfulness for the opportunity to talk more about these things and get that collaborative support and brainstorm ways that we can move forward and have that accountability around some of these things that are challenging to change. But we've also, he has set up meetings with principals where part of that is just his time with them, but it also includes a T&L component where we talk with principals about what's happening in their building around T&L, how can we support so that things can start to surface and we can start to know how to provide support in those areas. And so I just wanted to do a quick celebration because on one of those walkthroughs, we happened to, well, we've seen a number of great things and had a number of great conversations with principals, but in this building, actually back in their PD space, Joanne took us in there to see what their 3rd grade team had done to collaborate around unit planning. And at IDA, they have been very intentional about trying to integrate content areas into instruction, which, as you can imagine, is pretty challenging. Our whole system has been working on those guaranteed outcomes, so the essential standards. So it's kind of hard to capture in these images what all the work that went into this was, but they, as you can see across the top, are the months of the year. Down the side are the different content areas. And so they mapped out things like SEL, literacy, math, science. How can we think about what content do we teach? Which standards are we saying are essential? And how can we find ways to weave in the places that it makes sense to combine content areas in an instructional unit? And they've got their assessments up here and it's pretty amazing to look at. So I just wanted to take a second to celebrate that 3rd grade team and their collaboration that they showed in getting that work done. We've also been having additional conversations around AI, artificial intelligence. The state is putting together sort of a statewide PLC for leaders around this. So we are joining that. And we have sent some information to teachers about some potential trainings if they're interested in getting more information about how does this impact their classroom, how can they utilize it as a professional, how can they think about using it as a tool with students. And so that conversation, lots more to come on that topic, I am quite sure, but yeah, we are definitely engaging in the opportunities that are being shared across the state. We've also been over this last month getting our social studies pilot going, particularly at elementary. So this year is a pilot year for social studies with the hope to adopt new materials. It has been a very long time since we've adopted social studies materials. So I think people are really excited to get their hands on some new materials and see what that might look like. So we've got the elementary team getting trained next week, I think it is, to start implementing those resources to see how it goes. And part of, I talked to you guys last spring about this, but part of the social studies adoption will be ensuring that we include that tribal history and cultural component that's a requirement. And we have not yet implemented systematically. We have teachers using since time immemorial across the district, but we haven't done it systematically because we have not adopted social studies since that law came about. So this is our opportunity to do that. And as part of that, Troy and I are going to be hopefully attending, Yakima Nation is having a tribal convening for district leaders to talk about that portion of the law that says you should collaborate with local tribes. What does that look like, and how do districts do that well and authentically and meaningfully? So I can't remember when that is, but it's coming up.
I want to say November 7th or 9th.
Yeah,
Somewhere in that.
that sounds right.
November.
Yep. And then I think this is the last one I have. The MAP reading, math, and science testing has been completed. And so one last celebration before I conclude, and that is just celebrating Mount Stewart's growth this represents the growth from fall of last year to fall of this year. And they hit all of their expected growth in both content areas in the grades that test at in MAP at elementary. So that was pretty exciting to see, and definitely deserves acknowledgement. And that's all I have. Yep.
Board, do you have any questions for Jen?
When you figure out AI at the K-12 level, can you tell us how to do it at the college level?
You said a long time. When was the last social studies curriculum updated?
Well,
It's
different for different pockets because we didn't adopt a K-12 social studies last time we did adopt. And so I would say probably the longest any one grade level has been is probably close to 20 years. Yeah. And some have gotten new material sooner than that, but yeah.
All right. Thank you very much, Jen. Board, if there's no other questions. All right. So that takes us into our student reports. And Amari and Mac, you guys can take it away.
Yes, thank you, Mike. So I am doing my student report on homecoming week this year, and it was very successful at the high school. ASB had Disney themed dress up days for all week, and because our theme this year is the happiest place on earth at Ellensburg High School, so we're doing Disney. Homecoming week was a great morale booster and helped students have fun after a first month back in school, kind of a hard transition. This is nice, like lighten up. The assembly went great. There was, other than Mr. Mustard painting himself blue like Aladdin, it was entirely student led, which was fantastic to see. And we had over 600 people at the dance, which is a great increase from last year. 100 people at movie night and 140 people at dodgeball. And then there was Tuesday volleyball one. It was a toga gym jam, so we were all dressed up in our togas. And then Thursday we had bingo, and there was great turnout, great prizes. And then Friday night this was the first win we've taken our homecoming football game since I've been in high school, which was cool to see. And then we had our royalty announced on Friday as well. And then I talked to ASB advisor Chris Wilson and exec president Avery Nemro, and they wanted to give a special thanks to everyone that helped. Any questions on homecoming week?
Congratulations, I believe, because you were voted homecoming king, were you not?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so I was at the game and I was trying to remember, I believe. So congratulations on that. So yeah, homecoming week and the football game and lots of the activities were a lot of fun. So board, any questions? Okay, Amari?
All right, so my student report is on fall sports. So for our cross country team has had a lot of success this year and has done very well in a lot of our races. Recently, our varsity boys and girls team went to the Lewis and Clark Invitational in Oregon, where they took home second place for both the boys and the girls varsity teams. The Lewis and Clark Invitational is a big deal because it mentions some of the top teams in the country from California, Florida, outside of the US, I think. So just some pretty big teams from out of state. So for our cross country team to take home second place from both is great. So for our volleyball, our varsity girls team has a 8-1 record. Our JV has an 8-0 record. And our C team has an 8-2 record. And so our girls volleyball plays tonight in Sela, and they're looking forward to pulling out with a win and to make a state appearance this year. Our varsity girls soccer has a 1-12 record, and the JV record is 8-4-1. And so they're loving and I met with their captains, and they're enjoying loving learning more about their sport and playing the game that they love so very much. Our football team is 3-4 for varsity, and JV is 0-6-1. And our varsity team is looking forward to playing Ifreda this Friday, and with luck on their side, they'll be able to make the playoffs this year. And our swim team has been doing very well and is looking forward to sending some of their athletes to state this year. And our cheer team has been a great support in building up our canine and bringing fun new ideas backed by our amazing athletic director, Cole Canier, with starting more cheer camps for just all the canine to learn more cheers and to be better supportive of our sports teams and fans of the game. So bringing the school spirit up. So that is the fall sports report. Any questions?
I don't think we have any questions, but thank you very much, Amari. So. All right, that will take us into the next section of our meeting tonight, business, and we start with the enrollment report.
So you have the numbers in your packet. You can see that our October count, as we anticipated, was significantly higher than our September count. We had an increase of 71.6. And as we discussed in September, that is primarily due to some of the changes in our choice programs and making sure that those were accurately being able to be counted, particularly the online program and a few other things. So that's it. We did not have that many students move into the district between September and October. It was a better situation for getting the count, particularly in those programs. That was the biggest thing. So we had as of the October count, our 22 FTE over Kim's budgeted projection for the year. So hopefully we can maintain that. And so that's sort of a healthy number to be above. So are there any questions?
Board, any questions? No? All right. Thank you, Troy. That takes us to Kim and the financial update.
Good evening. Tonight I'm going to be going over the September 2023 report. Of course, this is our first month of the year, so there's not a lot of activity, but there is some. So right now the general fund is right on target of the projected revenue expenditure of 8%. The general fund is just a little under 7% for both revenues and expenditures, with the fund balance coming in at 10.32% or 9.8% when you consider restricted items. There is a discrepancy between Kittitas County Treasurer's report and our trial balance. And this is just again due to some payroll timing issues, and it'll be cleared out again during this month in October. Capital project fund, there's a little activity in this fund for the month. Revenue came in at 0.93% and expenditures came in at 0.07%. So as you can see, there's not a lot of activity in those funds right now, but There will be as we go along. There was no discrepancies between the Kittitas County Treasurer's report and the trial balance. Same with the debt service fund, not a lot of activity. Our first big payment for principal and interest is in December. So you'll see that coming in December. So the revenue came in at 1.58%, which is mostly interest and a little bit of taxes coming in, and expenditure at 0.02%. I think that was a bond fee, just so you know why we did have expenditure. So it was just a little bit of a fee. There was no discrepancies between Kittitas County Treasurers and the trial balance. The ASB fund actually had a good volume of revenue coming in. They always do at the beginning of the school year. A lot of revenue comes in for the ASB cards and yearbooks. And so revenue came in at 10.49% and expenditures came in at 1.71. Then the fund balance is at 461,000. There was no discrepancy between Kittitas County Treasurer and the district. The private purpose fund, as we all know, is not a budgeted fund, but just so you know, the fund balance sits at approximately $30,000. That is our scholarship fund where we pay out scholarships for those. And again, there was no discrepancy between Kittitas County Treasurer and Ellensburg School District. Transportation fund, again, there was not a lot of activity in this one either. There was 0.33% of revenue and 0 expenditures for September. The fund balance is a little over $1 million right now. And I do believe we plan to purchase some more buses this year. And hopefully they come a little faster than they did last year, but we'll see. And again, there was no discrepancy between Kittitas County Treasurer and Ellensburg School District. Again, I would like to remind everyone that this report is presented with the information I have currently. It is subject to change as we continue through the year. I would also like to remind everyone that revenue sources are used in their current funds for authorized expenditures and can't usually be transferred to be used in different funds unless authorized by adopted budget or within the accounting laws. And that is what I have. So there's not a lot going on, but we will see more activity as we go along. Are there any questions?
It's a much lighter report at the beginning before we spend the money.
Looking pretty good right now.
Good.
Now, when we get our insurance payment in October, we just paid it. So next month will look a little bit different with a $750,000 insurance payment.
All right. Thank you very much, Kim. Board, any questions? All right. Thank you. All right, that takes us on to resolution 18.10.23 unclaimed property.
This is a resolution that we bring to you every year. It's for our unclaimed property process. These are for checks that were not cashed by people that received them for either payroll or for accounts payable or vendors. For whatever reason, they lost it or they just didn't cash it because it was a small amount. That happens a lot of times. If it's a small amount, they just don't take the time to cash it. So this is just a resolution allowing us to void those checks and also or warrants and then send the money to the state so that if they want to claim it, they just go through the state and they claim it through the state. We do notify people if it's $75 or more to let them know that we have a check or a warrant outstanding for them. And that we could reissue to them if they would like, if they fill out the affidavit. But if it's less than 75, we do not have to notify them for that. So this is just a resolution letting us do that.
Board, do you have any questions or discussion about that? This is an action item.
Does the attachment need to be in here? Because right now it's just a resolution, so we don't see the actual attachment.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Leslie did not get that list, and so we'll have to get that to you guys. Sorry about that.
Something that we need to postpone or.
I believe it is something we could table. Yeah. Yeah. But it is an action item.
So
So
do we need to, can I move that we postpone this until the next study session?
Madeline has moved that we postpone this to the next study session where we'll have the complete documents.
Yeah, the only thing that I want to say is that it is due October 31st to the state. So we do have to send it to them. I can send out and get that list to you guys.
I
Should
just
we
am
do
wondering,
virtually?
it's listed with the resolution that there is an attachment, so we would want to see it, but I'm not sure our vote would change depending on what's on the attachment.
The amount of the unclaimed property is $1,300. That's what we're sending.
I don't know if this is legit, but I would be willing to vote on the resolution and just accept that we will get the attachment separately. Because I don't know if the content of the attachment is going to make a big difference if this is something that we do every year as a process.
I need help with this. So there was a motion. So we would need a second and a vote on Madeline's motion to postpone. And then we can readdress again.
I will second Madeline's motion to table it, but then I will separately move that we vote on the resolution with the understanding.
So, Adam move that we take out resolution. Yes, second.
Okay, May.
So now I'll move that we approve resolution 18.10.23 with the understanding that we will get the attachment by email.
I second.
So Cindy has moved that we adopt resolution 18.10.23 with knowledge that we'll get the attachment with the information needed. Jonathan has seconded. I will call a vote.
Before the vote, could we just, does that seem like an appropriate mode of action? Because are you concerned about not having the attachment?
I just worry about approving things without seeing it. And so I feel a little bit weird about it. But because there's a time crunch.
I'm going to email somebody right now and see if they can, see if I can get it to you guys, but I don't know if I'll be able to, but. Yeah. Let me see you guys want to just table, let me see what I can find for during this meeting, see if I can find anything. The attachment. Do you want to do that? Yeah.
I guess I don't have any problems with it, but I know it's a recurring thing we do continuously. It's not a huge amount, and the topic is just canceling the checks that were never cashed. So
This is our discussion part right now. So
I don't have any problems proceeding.
if Kim's trying to get us the information. She believes it's around $1,500.
It's actually $1,333 or $34.
$1,333. So what we're waiting to see is just the amounts of the checks that are outstanding.
Yeah, I think setting a precedent to have the information before approving it, especially because it doesn't say the amount in the resolution that we're going to be approving. So I think it would be, I mean, if we can just wait and see if she gets the information, if we can table it for a couple minutes.
Yeah. move it
So
later.
Troy, you
Yeah.
said we can postpone the vote till the end of the meeting?
Yeah, let's revisit it.
Okay. Do we have to deny or do we have to vote on the motion on the table? Yes. Okay, so I guess I'll call a vote. Do you need me to repeat? Cindy made the motion and Jonathan seconded. So all those in favor of approving Resolution 18.10.23 as stated before with information coming, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Nay. So that will not pass and we will readdress before the end of this meeting. We'll postpone the vote until, but we will hopefully do that tonight. So. All right, that will take us into our next item, which is public comment for business. This is regarding the ninth grade health materials adoption. If you give me 1 second, we do have public comment later tonight for general items, but this is in regards to the ninth grade health materials adoption only. And Leslie, can you please get us set up for public comment? And we'll go. The board is not obligated to respond to questions or challenges made during public comment period. The board's silence will not signal agreement or endorsement of any speaker's remarks. In my capacity as board president, I may terminate an individual's remarks when the allotted time has passed, or if any speaker makes uncivil comments, including obscene comments, comments that are defamatory towards another person, or commentary that is unwarranted invasion of privacy. I'd ask that you respect staff members' privacy and consider putting any concerns you have in writing if they pertain to an individual personnel matter. The board can then review and forward those to an appropriate administrator. Individuals in person wishing to be heard by the board need to be signed up to speak, and those on Zoom need to add their names to the document in the Zoom chat box. If you are unable to do this, individuals may also be recognized within Zoom by using the icon or emoji to show you are raising your hand for public comment. Once the board chair calls on an individual, they will identify themselves by stating their name and address for record. Individuals will proceed to make comments within the 3-minute time limit. If an individual wants to request a response from the board, this may be possible by submitting this request in writing or email to board@esd401.org. Leslie, are we about ready for public comment? Okay.
That's okay. I'll take it anyway. It comes.
All right, Leslie, if you want to call up the first person signed up, we'll start with those in person and then anybody on Zoom will move to that if there's the case. So.
Hello. Okay. Yeah. I'm ready to go. I'd like to, my name's Delana Brecken and I live at 90 Blue Sky Lane, Ellensburg, Washington. I'd like to voice concern with the decision to adopt the middle school Chapter 19.1 health curriculum for high schoolers, as I didn't feel that it met all of the state learning outcomes for high schoolers. It doesn't provide students with age-appropriate depth on matters of sexual identity and gender expression. I'm concerned that the high school has kept the currently adopted curriculum on this topic out of the classroom and as available as opt-in, and I'm not sure why it's kept in the principal's office and why a student has to ask permission to access it. This omission from the classroom health curriculum reinforces that queer students are not valid, which in turn is a tacit endorsement of the bullying that occurs at EHS. We've lost queer EHS students to suicide and others have attempted unsuccessfully. The climate at the high school needs to change. My own EHS student struggled immensely with anxiety and depression during her time at EHS. And as I learned more about the specific incidents and the environment she had to endure, it makes more sense. It's an awful feeling to worry if your kid will survive each day. High school students have access to all kinds of information. It's important to provide them with accurate educational content so they can develop their own critical thinking skills around these complex ideas. Keeping educational material outside of the classroom perpetuates stereotypes and misinformation and makes it unsafe for an already vulnerable population. If we do adopt this curriculum and continue with the opt-in, more robust and thorough curriculum that resides in the principal's office, I wanted to find out how the students and families will be notified about that opt-in option, because it isn't something that I recall being given any information around. Thank you.
Thank you, Delana.
Oh, I feel so short. Thank you. I am Lorraine Barlow. My address is 11670 Monastash Road. And I wanted to thank you, first of all, for the opportunity for allowing public comment before the adoption process. And I would also like to echo some of what Delana said. What I would have liked to have seen is more transparency about why the first booklet that was, and my understanding, originally approved, why that booklet was then removed before school started and used as an opt-in booklet. And when I contacted OSPI, I was told that students have the right to, and parents have the right to opt out legally, but it's not legal to ask students to opt in to learn about required curriculum. So it's been excluded for over a year from the curriculum. And so my concern is that it's a bit superficial, and it seems to kind of link the idea that all attraction is sexual. There's a section that lists in the curriculum that is quote unquote opt-in, it lists 10 sexual orientations and 10 romantic attractions, sorry. And in the middle school curriculum, it lists 5 out of 10 sexual attractions and 0 out of 10 romantic attractions. So it makes it seem like all attraction is sexual attraction regardless. And the most important thing that's left out for me is in the middle school curriculum, there's no mention of suicide. It mentions that students might experience anxiety or depression, but there needs to be a mention of suicide because it has happened. And, you know, as was pointed out, students have tried. Students who seem like they wouldn't be students who would try that. And so I know it's one small thing in the overall curriculum. It's a small lesson, but each small exclusion leads up to a big feeling of exclusion for students. So I would like to see the original curriculum used or a very good explanation of why it's not being used. Thank you.
Thank you, Lorraine.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Miles Hazlett. I live at 105 North Anderson Street and I'm a senior at EHS. Thank you, Miss Barlow and Delana. I'm kind of a student speaking on the issue. I'm going to be addressing the addition of the 19.1 lesson to the Ellensburg High School's health curriculum. The addition was in response to EHS not following Washington State's OSPI's requirements for high school level health curriculum. There was a sufficient material, but then my principal, Mr. Snow, took it away from the health classroom and locked it away in his office for students to access only if they had gotten special permission, parent permission. Self-identity educational material is required in a health class, not something that students need to seek out themselves. Instead of putting the material back in the health classroom where it belongs, when confronted with their disobedience of state learning standards, EHS got a new sexuality and gender curriculum, 19.1, which you will be voting on. This is a middle school curriculum, and I'm wondering with what logic was this considered to be an appropriate solution? Our high school needs a high school level health curriculum to address the developmental stage in life that a high school student's age are at. Dumbing down the sexuality and gender curriculum to cater to bigoted parents, students, and staff's personal beliefs is not acceptable in a public school that's supposed to conform to regulations of OSPI. In addition, 19.1 is generally vague. It avoids using to-the-point language and dances around the topics. The introduction paragraph on page 609 is clearly written for a person of middle school age, and I take particular issue with the section labeled Questions about Sexual Orientation on page 615. The text says, quote, "It is normal for some adolescents who are heterosexual to feel confused about their sexual orientation," unquote. The text says that, quote, "Most adolescents sort out their feelings," unquote. This may not have been intended, but language like confused perpetuates the idea that teenagers who are not straight are just confused and they will sort out their feelings and eventually be heterosexual. Here, this lesson uses ignorant language that is very common in homophobic rhetoric and assumes heterosexuality to be the default and normal identity for a young person. The section labeled homophobia on page 616 is decent, but insufficient and fails to address the suicide rates of people in the LGBTQ+ community because of the effects of homophobia and transphobia. Just as a reminder, EHS has lost a student by suicide, and several students have attempted suicide as a result of homophobia. And this is not a friendly reminder. I know that the existence of queer people has been unfortunately deeply politicized in our society, and I know that if EHS adopts an age-appropriate curriculum with LGBTQ+ education, then bigoted parents will hate it. I know that, but I do care. But I do not care. Their hate and homophobia is not my problem. If parents don't want their high school students to be taught a well-researched, developmentally appropriate, and factual curriculum, then they are fully able to opt out their child out of the health class. I am tired of running in circles with my conservative principal. Safe, healthy, and alive students should
the time
be.
has ended. So thank you. Thank you, Miles.
Can somebody finish that for him? Can somebody finish reading that for him?
Sure. I'd be glad to.
Would you like me to continue?
Thank you for the time this evening. I'm Hannah Ferdine. My address is 808 East Juniper Avenue, Ellensburg, Washington. I grew up here. My mother started PFLAG in the 80s. My brother grew up here gay. That's why I'm here. I only learned about this today. I'm going to continue with what Miles had to say, and I would ask you to be respectful and to hear his words. Safe, healthy, and alive students should be your #1 priority. I know I've gone off topic from the health curriculum, but it isn't even off topic because this is connected to my school's homophobic climate. 19.1, a middle school curriculum, is unacceptable. I'm asking you to follow OSPI's health education requirements. It is really that simple, and adopt a curriculum that follows it. To reiterate, healthy and alive students is more important than bigoted people's feelings. The Trevors Project research has found that LGBTQ youth who found their school and home to be LGBTQ affirming reported lower rates of attempted suicide. Having an age-appropriate, inclusive, and fact-based health curriculum that thoroughly includes LGBTQ plus education is a good step at improving the climate at EHS. I could talk about this a lot more, but I'll conclude here. If you would like to get in contact with me, feel free. My email, and then he's included his email. Thank you for listening. I couldn't say it better. My brother grew up here in the 50s and 60s. He went to Morgan Middle School. He was seen by a teacher holding hand with another boy. I'm too upset to tell you what happened to him, to publicly humiliate him. The silence on the part of adults is not okay. It's harmful. I've had students who have gone through the process of attempting suicide. I'm aware of this. They don't know I know. That's a hard thing to go to school and work for. When you have a system that is not supporting the human beings in front of you, we're talking about lives at stake. And when suicide is kept quiet, it doesn't change the possibility. When we keep things quiet, it harms people. We normalize hate more than we normalize safety. And I really want us to be thinking about that parent to parent. I will share with you that my daughter's boyfriend committed suicide. His parents included this topic during his services. They had courage. I'm asking you to please have courage. It matters.
Thank you, Hannah. Okay, no one has signed up online, and that's everybody on the list. Okay. All right, thank you for everyone who spoke tonight. That will conclude public comment on the ninth grade health materials adoption. At this time, it takes us into business, and we have the instructional materials adoption, ninth grade health, sexual health standards.
Okay, these are slides you've seen before. And in fact, not just, we went through them fairly extensively at the last study session, but they're the same slides that were used previously when we adopted the health materials 2 springs ago. So on that note, just a quick reminder that we have been through a series of adding to this curriculum. We adopted as part of a K-12 health adoption in spring of 2022. And part of that health adoption was the sexual health ed component. And as part of that process, a multi-stakeholder team, including teachers and administrators, and then through the IMC parents, identified, in addition to the materials, a list of outcomes that they wanted to see that matched the OSPI learning standards. So those outcomes included for high school that gender under self-identity, that gender identity and sexual orientation would be part of it. And then in this last year, spring of 2023, we adopted Flash because when we adopted health, and as a reminder, during that adoption, the supplement was not part of core. It was specifically outlined to you as the board as part of the adoption process that it would remain opt-in. So it was never adopted as core materials, and therefore it hasn't really been removed. It's always been officially adopted as supplemental material. And then we do have to teach comprehensive sexual education twice in high school. And so the thought when we adopted the health materials was we could probably use some of the same materials for the second time it needed to be taught in CFI. But when we started to implement, everyone kind of looked at that and thought that doesn't really make sense for students. It doesn't make sense for the teachers. So we adopted Flash last spring to be that portion of sex ed for CFI. Then this fall, we kind of realized that while as part of the original adoption, one of the outcomes identified was talking about those topics under self-identity, the resources didn't really support them. And so in order to have clear, transparent resources for the teacher, for the community when they asked to see our materials, there needed to be an additional adoption to add and augment. So I've listed there, which you guys have seen before, this Ellensburg School District outcomes. And I also included here, this is not in the original slides. I added it last second so I can get it reposted so it's part of the public documentation. But I added this for some more clarity around where this particular lesson fits in the larger scheme. So this particular lesson was meant to augment that self-identity where we realized we didn't have resources to support the outcomes that were identified by the team. And so self-identity is one of the standards for sex ed that fit under larger standards of health. So this falls in for a health course. One component of the health course is sex ed, and one topic is self-identity. And again, the outcomes didn't match the resources that we had, which is what brings us here tonight. But you can see from that previous slide of where we've been with this, this does not have to be the end of the conversation. As with any of our materials, we can always be reevaluating what is working with our students, what is working with our community, what's working with our teachers, and we can always revisit that. So there's that too. So some notes about the comprehensive sex ed law. It does need to be medically and scientifically accurate, age appropriate, and inclusive of all students. So going back to that self-identity standard, the reason we're here tonight is because we recognized our resources did not cover the outcomes that Ellensburg School District had identified through the adoption process in spring of 2022, nor did it meet adequately enough that requirement under law. So that's why we're here tonight, voting on including lessons that address gender identity and sexual orientation.
Thank you, Jen. Board discussion, questions for Jen? Troy, I assume, can help answer if there's any.
I had a follow-up question about the opt-in process. Can you explain that for the supplemental material?
Yeah, and I did want to clarify that as well. So it's my understanding, we've only had this curriculum for a year and the supplement for a year. It was my understanding that as part of the letter that goes out, we have to notify parents before we teach sex ed because they have a right under law and under board policy to opt out. So we have to notify them, and our teachers do a great job of that. And it was my understanding that it was part of that same letter that said, if you would like to opt out, let us know. And we also have additional resources that if you would like us to send them home, we are happy to do so. If we can check that to make sure that's happening, because it should be. Yeah.
Are parents required to approve of opting in, or can a student do that without parent permission?
That's a good question. I'd have to look into the.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I wasn't part of it. I'm assuming, I've always assumed it was parent permission. But I don't know since I wasn't here.
And that's something that we could look at too. I mean, like I said before, this is hopefully we always have a process of being able to have conversation around what works and doesn't work for students in our community.
I think the notion of supporting students, especially who are not getting support at home and maybe are at most risk for self-harm, sort of taking extra precautions to make sure that those students have access to information that might help them make sense of their own identity, would be useful. Yeah, and I think this is an issue around which parents and children are not always on the same page. And then the school's responsibility is to the child.
Yeah, and I think Bo during the study session sort of addressed all of the different resources and avenues in our schools that students can access those supports.
So just to reiterate, this will put us in at least compliance with those standards, right? This change.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be the end of the conversation. Sorry, go ahead.
No, it was just the outcomes is what they were.
Seems like there was some concern about a middle school supplement being used in the high school. Could you address that concern?
Sure. And again, it can be revisited, but the middle school, this is for a freshman class. So one might be able to argue that curriculum written for 6th or 8th graders might be closer than curriculum that potentially is written for upper high school. And it doesn't give, the curriculum doesn't give hard and fast, these are the age group where it's age appropriate. And in fact, OSPI clarifies that it is districts who determine when that content is introduced and how, which complicates things.
Sorry, I was looking for something. So if anybody else has something I want to.
Could I ask on the committee that adopts curriculum or suggests or proposes curriculum that then we approve, is there student representation on that committee?
There is not. Our policy doesn't currently indicate that students should serve on that.
I guess I'm asking because it seems like there is a fair amount of concern, including from members of the student body. And if there was some input on either what the curriculum itself is or how students could access it, independent maybe of parent permission, that would be a more transparent way to have these discussions, or would include that perspective in the discussions.
Okay, found what I was trying to find. Because I had asked you earlier, but I wanted to specifically remember. So you responded to me earlier. This is not replacing any curriculum that is out there. This is just an additional portion that we're adding to the 9th grade curriculum. There's no removal of anything. It's just adding more to it.
Correct, because again, when this was proposed back in spring of 2022, the health curriculum at that time in that presentation, when the board adopted those materials, it was presented that supplement would be an opt-in material, and that should we ever want to include that in the core curriculum, we would bring it back to the board for approval. It was very specifically stated that way to the board. So yes, this is in addition to, it's not replacing anything.
Thank you. Board, any other questions or? I do have one more. The outcomes that we were hoping that the district, the outcomes that OSPI, that was what you had up there for the age groups and things like that. For the 9th grade curriculum outcomes, let's see, I'm trying to. sorry. Lost my train of thought. For what we adopted for the opt-in flash, which is, I believe, the junior year. Is that correct?
Yes, well.
In
junior,
CFI.
senior Typically.
Yeah. Okay. And so this, I think you've answered it, and I'm trying to, I apologize. I'm going to
It's
stop
okay.
there.
So I can maybe start talking and for what you were asking, and if you want to clarify specifically what you're wondering, I can address that too. But we don't have it by grade level. So the outcomes were identified by grade band, just like OSPI kind of has a document that offers suggestions. So I pulled this slide up, which we've reviewed before, which comes from OSPI, that does indicate that those outcomes that OSPI has, the standards, those topics that I had up there, those are required, and we have to meet the other requirements about being inclusive and age appropriate and medically accurate. So there are some requirements around it, but there is some ambiguity from OSPI and within the law around when that content is introduced and how. And that is left up to districts and to boards to determine that. So it is by the high school age band, not by ninth grade versus junior. So at the time when that committee created those outcomes for students, it was that would be content covered in high school.
Okay, thank you. Do we know roughly a rough percentage of how many kids have opted out or opted in for the curriculum?
I don't have a rough percentage for the opt-in, but the opt-outs are the lowest this year than they've been in a long time. It's I think it's under 10%. So I want to say it's around 3 or 4% this year.
Okay, thank you.
And is a supplemental material, is that at the same time that you're offering this opt-out for students? Is that when you provide this is available also? Okay. That just once a year kind of thing at the beginning of the year?
In the health course, it's typically taught towards the end of the semester. So it hasn't yet been taught, which is part of why we're trying to get this in before it is taught this year. So with those current materials, it's only been taught once in the health course last year. And I want to say that the law says we have to notify parents 30 days in advance. And so that's when parents are notified of the opt-out opportunity. And that's when they would also be notified of the additional resources available.
And Madeline and Jonathan, since you don't have high schoolers yet, they do usually send home like a permission slip form or something that talks about what they'll be discussing in the class and the brief overview of the course. And then if parents have more questions, they can go to the website and I think it's on the website, isn't it, of the curriculum and stuff like that. So
they can access it electronically. Yeah.
I know my talking time is over, but you all heard me say that opting in is not legal, right? OSPI said clearly you cannot ask students to opt in. That's not legal. That's why there's opt out.
Cindy, you were going to say something.
I just wanted to summarize what's at stake. It seems like what we're doing right now is voting on whether these supplemental materials will be available to ninth graders. We're adding material to what's currently in place.
Adding material to the core to ensure that it does cover the requirements under the law for covering self-identity. Yeah.
And it seems like from public comment, there are concerns, not necessarily, well, so there's some concerns about this particular lesson, but there are also concerns about the kind of access to the wider curriculum and also school climate issues, which are not going to be addressed by particular lesson, right? So I'm wondering if we as a board could revisit the idea of this opt-in policy and the access that students have to it as part of our look at school climate, especially at Ellensburg High School around these issues. But that doesn't seem necessarily tied to adopting this supplementary curriculum.
To my understanding, we are adopting, or we're up for vote is the adoption of 19.1 to be added to the current. It's not an opt-in, it's adding it where families would have the option to opt out of.
I guess what I wanted to pull apart was just the adoption of this particular curriculum from the broader issues, which I think we need to address at the high school. Those two things seem like they're separate from each other. We could come back to the larger issue. Right?
Yes, I think that's correct. We would be able to readdress the climate at the high school, but sorry. Yeah, I think I understand what you're saying. I'm just trying to.
What I'm thinking about is just this proposal is to add curriculum, which I think desperately needs to be added for us to be in compliance with Washington state standards, for us to meet those outcomes. This particular lesson may not be perfect, but it's better than not having it at all, is part of what I'm thinking. The larger question of how LGBTQ students are treated at the high school and the environment in which people learn and whether they feel welcome and safe is a broader issue that we need to address. So I'm just trying to separate those two things out.
Okay, thank you.
Could I also clarify? So I just want to make sure I'm absolutely clear on this. Sorry for repeating. Could you say one more time for ninth graders, what is opt-in and what is it that they're opting out of?
So the current health materials that were adopted in 2022 have the components that meet most of the sex ed topics. It does not adequately address the self-identity topic under the standards. So we are adding a lesson that will be part of core curriculum for all students. They do not have to opt into it. That will cover that. And parents, as always, will be able to opt out of any or all portions of sex ed. And then additionally, we have a resource that are available should anyone want them.
And then does CFI cover any more sexual identity stuff for students in their junior and senior year?
If you compare the terms and the way they're defined and how they appear in the lesson, they're fairly similar.
So that means last spring, when this was first adopted and the first health class was taught spring semester, neither were available. They were all supplemental. And so this language from 19.1 or the supplemental for the high school was not taught. And this would just be including stuff that was supplemental last year.
Yes. Okay. And again, the thought was when we initially adopted for health was that the outcomes clearly identified that would be covered. But as we learn and with feedback, it was clear that we needed resources that were clearly articulated what that would look like. In part for, as per law, parents can say, please show me. And of course we have culture where we are happy to open up any of our materials that we use in Ellensburg School District, but per law, parents can say, please show me the materials you use for sex ed, and we have to have those available. So with an outcome, but no materials that supported it, that was not sufficient.
Board, any more questions or discussion?
I guess I just want to follow up on the supplemental, where it's stored and who is in control of it. As far as is there just one copy of it? I mean, what does that look like?
No, we purchased, I don't remember the exact number, but we purchased a good chunk of them. I want to say maybe 100-ish. And to be honest, I am not sure where they are located, but they are not trying to be hidden from anybody. They are anybody that would like to have them. They're available. They just were not adopted by the board as part of core materials previously. And so per policy, they cannot be used with all students until they are.
Board, anything further? Right, this is an action item. It is stated as 9th grade health and sexual health standards. Instructional materials adoption.
Let me get the phrasing down.
Just read it as is on business.
What about the 19.1? Don't I have to say? I move that we adopt the 9th grade health materials. That includes lesson 19.1 from the comprehensive health. Let me know if I need to reword that.
Looking at the adoption. Instruction materials for 9th grade lesson 19.1.
I'll second.
Cindy has seconded. I will call a vote unless there's any other further discussion. We'll do a roll call vote. Jonathan?
Aye.
Madeline?
Aye.
Cindy?
Aye.
I vote aye. So lesson 19.1. The adoption of the 9th grade health standards 19.1 has been approved. All right, Troy, that takes us on to the next item, which is policy, second reading.
So still, before we transition to some business section. Oh,
thank you.
First of all, I want to apologize for the list not being attached. I was not able to access it, but we do have a work meeting on Friday that we could bring this to with the list. If that's okay with the board and Troy.
Yes.
All right, we can do a vote and action during the, okay.
And I do want to say I agree that it needed to be there to approve, so appreciate that.
Okay, so is there any motion or anything that's needed to do that, to move it to the studies, to the work session? So we'd need a motion to.
Okay, I move that we move the, the resolution for unclaimed property to our work meeting on Friday.
I'll second.
Madeline has moved that we table resolution unclaimed property to our study session or work session on Friday. Cindy has seconded. I'll call a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so we'll take care of that on Friday. Okay, so now we will move on to policy 6112 under Paul.
Yeah, so we did the first reading at the last meeting. This is the second reading of 6112 rental or lease property. If you have any questions, Kim can answer, but remember this was an accounting piece that really is just to meet some new or make sure we're meeting some of the regulations for accounting regulations.
And board, this is a action. So if you have any questions or discussion.
I just want to clarify the procedure as far as the rental or lease has not changed. It's just the way that the accounting is done. Okay.
Yeah, this year we have a new requirement for financial statements that we have to report any software, IT software that is downloaded onto our computers or as a third party. Most districts are using the $75,000 threshold. We don't have software that is 75,000 except our SIPC, which is our Skyward. But that one doesn't qualify because it's FTE rated. So we are charged based on our FTE. So that one does not qualify for that. So everything else is under 75,000. We just have to make sure we have a policy in place stating that.
Great, thank you, Kim. Board, action item.
Okay, I'll move to approve policy 6112.
I'll second.
Cindy has moved that we adopt policy 6112 and Madeline has seconded. Call a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, thank you. That will take us into board reports. Tasha's not here tonight as I so eloquently switched a couple of reports there. I do not have a board chair report tonight, other than quickly letting you guys know that we've gotten some information back about the RFP requests, and there'll be a presentation this Friday, I believe, at our work session over the superintendent search. And I've got a whole nice long email from Kevin that I'll bring and share with you guys as well. So, but that's it. So that can take us into public comment, which I can quickly back to my.
You have to read it again.
Yep, I have to read it again. Need to get a hard copy of that so it's easier to find. I apologize, board. I have to go find it. So, all right. All right, Leslie, if you can get us set up for public comment. The board is not obligated to respond to questions or challenges made during the public comment period, and the board's silence will not signal agreement or endorsement of any speaker's remarks. In my capacity as board president, I may terminate an individual's remarks when the allotted time has passed, or if any speaker makes uncivil comments, including obscene comments, comments that are defamatory toward another person, or commentary that is an unwarranted invasion of privacy. I'd ask that you respect staff members' privacy and consider putting any concerns you have in writing if they pertain to an individual or personnel matter. The board can then review and forward those to an administrator. Individuals in person wishing to be heard by the board need to be signed up to speak, and those on Zoom need to add their names to the document in the Zoom chat box. If you are unable to do this, individuals may also be recognized within Zoom by using the icon or emoji to show you're raising your hand for public comment. Once the board chair calls on an individual, they will identify themselves by stating their name and address for the record. Individuals will proceed to make comments within the 3-minute time limit. If an individual wants to request a response from the board, they may do so by submitting a request in writing to or email to board@esd401.org. Leslie? We have somebody signed up. All right. So we'll allow for 3 minutes per person and probably about 15 minutes or so for public comment.
Hello, my name's Delana Brecken and I live at 90 Blue Sky Lane. I just wanted to let the board know that I would like to, I plan to follow up with an email about, and to continue the conversation around the 9th grade curriculum, and hope to have us look in detail at the curriculum that is the opt-in curriculum, and explore if we can approve to have that actually used in the school, because it's an important component to changing the climate and letting students be heard, and letting just helping it be a more safe place for all students. So thank you.
Thank you, Delana. All right, thank you, Leslie. If nobody else is signed up and nobody on Zoom, we'll go ahead and close public comment, which takes us now to new business. Okay, well, that'll take us into our meeting closing. Troy, do we have an executive session tonight? Okay, no executive session. That takes us to board calendar. We all have our work session this Friday, and it is at 10. Did we solidify that the 10 o'clock worked? 10, okay. 10 to 3, yeah, ish, 3-ish. Anything else for board calendar board? All right, takes us to clarification and next steps.
I will just reiterate, I would like us to, as a board, perhaps at a future study session, to look again at climate issues so that all students feel welcome and safe at the high school.
Thank you, Cindy. Leslie, signing of documents tonight. Kate. All right, that takes us to an adjournment.
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
All right, thank you. Yeah, sorry. Madeline moved that we adjourn and Cindy seconded, so.
I don't seem too eager.
Yeah, all right. Thank you all for coming tonight, and that is our meeting.